Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome aboard the Cheeto Late. The Cheeto Late is a tank that I think is really worth showing at least once. Why? Because it's a nice Japanese tank. And yes, it's been a while since I featured Japanese tanks, right? So mostly when they came out, they had a time where I really featured a lot of tank reviews and gameplay and so on. Now, then we saw new additions, I need to respade vehicles, so Japanese tanks came a bit short, and the Cheeto Late is one of the latest additions, and it really convinces me as a tank. It's a good medium tank with armor, a gun, and mobility in a, let's say, triangular balance shape. It is not overpowered in any way, shape, or form, but it's also not weak in any way, shape, or form. The side armor is nothing too spectacular. It's mostly either 35mm on the hull or 50mm on the turret on the side, the rear as well. But it's the front that is a little bit KV1-ish. Okay, it's 75mm strong and a bit slow backwards, so it's somewhere between 80 and 90mm in effective armor. And that leads me to where this tank really shines when it comes to playing ping pong with jumbo shamans, you know, the M4A3E2 for example. With the short 75mm gun, where the APHE has around about 90mm of penetration, so you have a very good chance, especially at mid-range and long range, to bounce shots all day long. And at this battle rating, a lot of people just really don't understand what you shoot for weak spots on a tank and where to damage it, or what is the best when you come across a tank that you can't penetrate with your regular ammunition at mid tiers, let's put it that way. 4.7 is for me a bit mid tier-ish. Jumbo Shaman could easily defeat this tank's armor when switching, or not easily, but more or less reliable, defeat it with switching back to the stock shell. Nobody uses the stock shell on the 75mm except those who have to research the APHE shell. Yes, the damaging effect is better, but if you can't penetrate your target in the first place, what's the better damaging shell of use? And they also could switch to APCR, which I guess, I'm not quite sure if the Jumbos have access to it, but it has around about 145mm of penetration. 145mm of penetration is also the penetration value for the Type 1 APHE shell, the stock shell, and it's a glorious shell, I have to say. It just has a TNT equivalent of 67.84 grams. But it makes so much damage. The shrapnels reach so far. Most of the time you one-shot your opponents. And I think the magic is here that it has around about the same reload, with 10mm of more penetration and much more high explosive filling than, for example, the German 75mm that is featured on the Panzer IV series. So it's around about the penetration of the Packwagen, if I'm not mistaken. That is the good side. The bad side is you have no APCR, you have no other shell type, except the stock HE shell, which is more or less useless. Then there is also the tank survivability. If you take out a decent amount of ammunition, you sometimes can survive certain shots. But then you have long repair times, but you know, this is kind of what War Thunder is. And there I received a shot from a, what is that? Ah, it's a Churchill Mark 1. It was a Churchill Mark 1. And there you can see awesome gameplay. We have a Wirbelwind on the front and he can protect us from aircraft. I also have a German captured T-34 at my side, so balance overall, right? Then there is the gun handling. Now the turret rotation speed for my expert crew is nothing too spectacular with 11.3 degrees, but when we look at the crew for an ace crew and we look at the gunner targeting, 12.7, weird number really, 12.7 degrees per second maximum turret traverse and 4 degrees per second of target vertical speed, so the gun elevation speed practically. That is strange. Why? Well, you have 11 degrees of gun depression, so it takes you a few seconds to get on level ground if you press the C key and look around and accidentally pointed your view into the ground before that. However, you can work ridge lines like an absolute boss. You have nearly British amounts of gun depression. And then there is overall your horsepower to ton ratio. It's not that impressive really. It's around about 13. But it's not cripplingly slow either. It's okayish medium tank style, I would say. Maximum speed is 45 kilometers an hour. That's okayish. So I think the tank overall is really good. It's the overall shell's performance that I really like. So whenever you think about playing something Japanese, look for this tank. It is fun. You can bounce shots. You are very good in the flanking role. Your APHE is devastating. It's not an absolute nuke shell, but most of the time if you aim for the crew compartment, you one-shot your opponents. So 5.9 seconds is the ace crew reload for a Panzer IV, and on this tank it's a bit longer, 7.7. But overall I trade that any day of the week for the armor, the overall effectiveness, the survivability. It's a good experience. However, that's just said when you're in a down tier. In a top tier match you have to be careful, because when your armor means not that much anymore, then well, you have a problem. And this is one of the rare scenes where somebody actually escaped my 75mm gun. And now it's kind of the cleaning up phase. Now I have to move around and look for the lost enemies. I saw a bit of action around about the the C capture point, and I tried to investigate this. So far I've racked up a lot of kills. I captured a point. I was at first not in a wolf pack, but more or less alone. And you know, if you use flanking tactics, if you use ambush tactics, this tank is really great. And then there's obviously the CAS. Now let's talk about a bit Japanese CAS here. It's really not that great, is it? However, you have a few planes that can deliver one big strike, one big 800 kilogram bomb, but you have to pay attention that you pick the right 800 kilogram bomb, not the armor piercing one, but the high explosive one. You have the B5N1 at 1.7, you have the B7A2 at 4.3, so it can really support you. It has also two 20mm guns and can also play the anti-CAS role, but I highly recommend to use either the stealth or the universal belt for the 20mm and not the ground targets, as you know, primarily you should focus on shooting down aircraft with the 20mm and not go for any kind of anti-tank purposes. Overall, I think the Japanese planes excel in the anti-CAS role. I made a video about it. The Kia 43-3 is a beast. The Kia 100, where is it? Where is my Kia 100? Yeah, it's right here at 3.7. And then we also have the A7M1 as a premium. The bombers really are not that convincing. The fighters have rarely any rockets, and if they have, I tried them out, they're not really that useful. So you have solid tanks and you have very good aircraft for the anti-CAS role to shoot down Spitfires, and they can perform very well even at higher battle ratings. And that means if you play together with Germans, you can easily farm enemy fighters if you know what you're doing, if you're experienced pilots, and to support your tanks in not getting destroyed by rockets and or bombs, you're doing your team a massive favor. Imagine there is a medium or a light tank of your team having flanked the enemy team and having clean shots into their side, and an aircraft just wipes him out. Well, you know, he could have easily racked up the kills by shooting down the plane that is coming after him. You would have done your team overall a better favor in the overall spawn point battle. So what is the spawn point battle? Well, it is something that one of my long-term friends, so to speak, brought up in a discussion, the Orange Doom, and it's trying to whittle down not the enemy team's tanks or players, but to individually deny them the spawn points to get, for example, for capping a point, for destroying, damaging, or otherwise dealing with on an opponent of yours or a teammate of yours. And then also extending this thought into the air battle that's going on over the airfield, over the battlefield, I'm sorry. So when you are, for example, playing the anti-cast role, you can collect absurd amounts of spawn points, and you then can spawn in multiple vehicles to, for example, fight the spawn campers, you know, just trying to get maybe 1 or 2 kills on them by sitting still, rotating the turret, or, you know, using your neutral steering in a German tank to get the guns on them, shoot once, cripple them, shoot the next one, cripple it, maybe kill them also with the first shot, and then bail out to deny them the kill. Same goes for the fast cap. Russian tankers love to rush in with a fast AAA truck into the cap, capture it, get into a plane, and then bomb and rocket the hell out of the Axis teams or the enemy team at all, regardless if it is an American, a British, or a German team. Japanese tanks are a rare sight these days, I have to say, except at late night, and I think it's kind of a shame. So the Japanese tech tree really needs a bit love, even more love than we saw in the glimpse at on the dev server. So 1 premium at 6.0 most likely is not good enough. So you have seen me killing 8 tanks here. I survived the battle. I'm about to reach B, but not just quite fast enough. I'm quite sure that there were 2 enemy tanks, and I would love to have killed them both. Again, let's quickly recap. I really like this tank, but you can have your difficult times in an up tier, but in a down tier, you're almost like a long range heavy. The gun is fantastic with penetrating enemies and just one-shotting them in, I'd say, 80% of the times. And I thought really this tank deserves to be shown at least once. And as usual, let's have a quick look at the post-battle results. So, for my 8 kills, I got nearly 50,000 silver lines and 3,288 modification research points, as well as the Survivor Award. And then I also was first place with 2,355 score points, with not taking an aircraft. 1 capture, 1 assist, and 8 kills. That was quite a nice battle. So you can see the tank is not fully upgraded. You can't research any shells. It will get even more mobile once I'm finished the spading process of this tank. There you can see the armor. And the lower glacis is actually a bit vulnerable when we go into the further view. The overall armor plates is solid. You don't have to really face or fear any kind of AAA at that battle rating. The gun mantle is actually kind of a weak spot, but most enemies don't shoot there. So overall, a solid tank. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Let me know your opinion about this tank, if you have played it, if you have played against it. Do you think it's awesome, or is it just another tank that you have never heard of that kind of performs okayish? Let me know. And we will see each other in the skies and on the battlefields of War Thunder.